to expand on global biodiversity progress. We're joined by Michael Dorsey, Program Chair and Professor of Practice in the College of Global Futures at one of my favorite places, ASU, Arizona State University. Good to see you, Professor, and welcome to the big show. Give our audience a little background here on the COP conference in Montreal, and maybe share a little about what biodiversity means to you and I.
Absolutely. This is the 15th meeting of the world's nations at the Conference of Parties, or the COP conference up in Montreal. This is the 15th time that, 100 and almost 200 countries, 190 odd countries have come together to basically bring a peace accord to the war that we're waging against species on this planet, against life and livelihood as we know it, particularly wildlife and nature. So the Conference of the Parties is the place where the world's governments come to increase ambition to protecting nature that we all know and love, and really nature that supports us. Something like, depending on whose data you believe, 80 to 90% of most medicines, almost all medicines, come from the natural world. The natural world, biodiversity, as scientists call it, is the sort of the fabric of this planet. It's the stuff that supports us.
Right.
It's the stuff that keeps us alive.
Well, here's the skeptic in me, and I apologize for maybe sounding not up to speed on what's accomplished in the last 15 years, but nobody hates the earth, right? Everybody likes nature. Everybody likes the earth. So you've got 200 countries gathering to agree that we like the earth. The issue is, what are they really doing about it? What concrete steps are being taken right now, or at least being planned in the near future, that's going to reverse whatever the loss or impact that we're seeing on planet Earth?
So first, we've actually been at this process of bringing the countries of the world together for much more than 15 years, even though this is the 15th meeting. They aren't every year. I was there, back in the early 90s, in 1992, at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, that created the framework for these conferences on biodiversity. So it's really been a much longer effort and play at this. And what are they doing? They're coming together, raising money, putting money on the table. Just at this year's United Nations General Assembly, the Germans committed over $1 billion, just one country, into the pot. That admittedly is not enough. It's way, way short. We need something like not even 10 times, not even 100 times, more like 1,000 times more money. But it's a first step in the right direction. And that commitment of 30 by 30, protecting 30% of the planet's biodiversity by the year 2030, that certainly isn't enough. In some places, we need more like 50% of nature protected. And even in places like the Amazon, the lungs of the planet, we need maybe more like 75 or 80% of that Amazon rainforest protected, because it's the stuff that sustains life, not just in Brazil and in South America, but really on the planet. So the Conference of the Parties is that space and place where countries come together, put money, increase ambition, not just of their own governments, but really motivate the private sector to get on board, to stop killing and destroying nature, to come up with rules and regulations to deliver.
Is the private sector coming along on this? I mean, you hear good things from big companies. Look, everyone says the right thing. My criticism is, I don't see a lot of companies doing a ton.
They're not doing enough, but I think it's fair to say that the United Nations, like it or not, have issues with it, as I certainly do, as many of your listeners probably do. It is, however, the only place. There isn't another space or place where all the world's countries come together. So we need that convening power of the UN system, but we also have to increase ambition, and we've got to keep the street heat on those in those C-suites, like in corporations, to do more. Because we've got to do more if we're going to really save biodiversity.
Right. Okay. So let's see who's responsible. Who do we hold responsible for what's happening to planet Earth? And I'm sure this is a longer conversation, but very quickly, who is it? Businesses? Is it consumers? Is it certain sectors or industries that we should be looking at?
Well, look, in the main, the biggest contributors are large industries. Those in the forest industry, for example, those that are, vast, dramatically reducing biodiversity, those that are, exploiting, nature. Those are the ones that we can point the finger at. But really, this is an all hands on deck in terms of the response. We need consumers not just in it to, for ideological reasons, but because they are the ones that pressure their elected officials to make larger commitments in terms of resources. Those in office have the ability to set new rules and more stringent rules and regulations to stop corporations from destroying, nature as we know it. So it's really about all hands on deck. Nobody is sort of excluded.
I think it's absolutely fantastic that you're raising awareness on this. Give us something positive to take away from this. What's something you hope to see by the end of this conference that we can take away and say, this is going to help all of us?
I think if we get increased ambition in terms of money on the table from countries by at least 10 times what they're talking about now, we can't have a single billion-dollar conversations. We've got to get up into the tens of billions. That puts us on a pathway to at least meeting the floor of $100 billion a year commitment, and then doing much, much more from there. So increasing the amount of money on the table to protect biodiversity is something that we might see coming out of Montreal, and that'll be a big, big, giant step in the right direction.
Professor, we are rooting for your success and the success of this big summit. Thank you very much joining us from ASU.